first moving pictures that eventually turned into movies? Well, as far as I can tell, it really starts with a device called the magic lantern. There were devices that were able to project images before this, but I'll explain why I feel the magic lantern is the birthplace of the first moving pictures. According to Wikipedia, the magic lantern is an early type of image projector employing pictures painted, printed, or produced photographically on transparent plates, usually made of glass, one or more lenses, and a light source. Basically, you could think of the magic lantern as a primitive slide projector. At the time of its invention, the light sources were either sunlight, candles, or oil lamps, but the invention of the limelight in the 1820s made the magic lantern very bright and contributed to its popularity. The magic lantern was invented by a Dutch scientist named Christian Huygens in the mid-17th century. He based his design off of some drawings he saw in a book that described using mirrors and sunlight to project an image. This was called a steganographic mirror. He took ideas from this and from another Dutch inventor named Cornelis Drebbel to make his magic lantern. At the time, he considered it a frivolous invention. He really didn't want to show it off to anyone. Now, there are a lot of gaps in the story, and there are some claims that it was invented by other people. There are possible German origins, for example. The short of it is, the magic lantern started to become popular as a teaching device. Anybody that went to school pre-internet can tell you all about slideshows in grade school and college. The magic lantern was the precursor to that. It made its way over to the US and can even be seen in an episode of AMC's Hell on Wheels. This was a novelty that people would pay to see back in the day. As time went on, the magic lantern became more complex. All different kinds of slides were created with mechanics added that would allow the operator to turn parts of the slide. Here's an example of where part of the slide could be turned, making it look like mice were going into the sleeping man's mouth. Some magic lanterns had 3 projectors built in, and the combination of different types of slides would produce desired effects. In my research, I found this website that has all kinds of cool images of the types of slides that were used. If you really want to check out more stuff about this, the link to this website is in the description below. Okay, so what people were doing at this time was creating really basic animation. These were the first moving images. I know these look simple, but you have to remember that when these first came out, people had never seen anything like this before. The invention of photography allowed people to take the idea of the moving picture to a new level. The earliest surviving photograph, and it's actually called a heliograph, that we still have today, was taken in 1827 by this guy in France. This image was taken using a polished pewter plate that was coated in a solution of lavender oil that contained light-sensitive bitumen that was dissolved in it. The plate was inserted into a camera obscura and positioned in a window in the second-story workroom. After several days of exposure to sunlight, the plate yielded an impression of the view from out of his window. I won't get into the history of photography, as that's a whole study unto itself. And it's actually really interesting, and maybe I'll get to it someday. But suffice it to say, lots of advancements were made that led to the use of film photography. The critical advancement was getting exposure time down to the point where photos of things in motion could be taken and not be blurry. This is a zoetrope. This is where we really start to see animation in a way that we know it today beyond the simple mechanical movements of the magic lantern. The forgotten art of the zoetrope is something that's really interesting that I might cover in a later video, but anyway, there are all kinds of zoetropes back in the day with drawings on them that gave the impression of objects moving. The first moving picture of an actual object was a series of rapidly taken photos of a horse in motion by photographer Edward Muybridge. You see, back in 1878, a California businessman named Leland Stanford had a bet with his colleagues that at some point in a horse's stride, all 4 hooves were off the ground. So he enlisted Muybridge to take photographs of the position of a horse's hooves in rapid succession. Muybridge's 12 pictures showed that Stanford had won the bet. Now, you need to keep in mind that back in 1878, it's not like one camera could take 12 successive shots rapidly. Muybridge set up a 12-camera array to take the photos. The original film negatives didn't survive, unfortunately, but wood carvings were made based on those negatives, which is what you see here that were then used in a zoetrope. Muybridge went on to create a sequential photo projector called a zoogyroscope or zoopraxiscope in 1879, which really was basically the next generation magic lantern. It allowed him to show his sequential photos through a projector using a disc that had the images on it, and the disc was rotated like a record. So, to me, this is the first projected movie of a real-life object. But as cool as this is, the method of capturing the images is pretty involved. You have to set up a bunch of cameras and have them fire off sequentially very quickly. That's time-consuming and expensive to set up. But in 1882, a French scientist named Etienne Jules Marie invented the chronophotographic gun. This was a camera that could shoot 12 still images in 1 second, or 12 frames per second. He used this camera largely for studying animal movements. But that's it right there. That's the first motion picture camera. Marie, or Mary, however you say it, was the first cinematographer. He also invented a way to shoot 60 frames per second and was able to make short little movies that way. So that's it. The moving picture industry, or the movie industry, has its roots in technology that dates back to the mid-1600s. It would be cool if we could show those people back then what resulted from their inventions. I think they would be pretty amazed at what we're able to do now. So if you like what I'm doing, please hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching.